Shalom, everyone. This is Reboot the Root coming to you here on this video channel and beckoning you to come and join me as we learn about the journey that you're on, the journey on the narrow road. And I'm appreciative that you've decided to come back and learn more about what it is to be a Hebraic follower of Yeshua HaMashiach. And so this is a good place to be at if you're new to Hebrew roots, that you're new to walking by the Torah, walking in the spirit of the Torah, finding your Hebraic roots in Yeshua, learning to live the ancient paths of the disciples of the original New Testament assembly of believers in Yeshua. So this is designed for beginners. It's designed to help you who are new to walking on the narrow road to find the truth that you've been searching for. So if you've been pricked, your heart has been pricked to find truth. Thank you for choosing this video to disciple you along the way. So I'm Reboot the Root, and we're in a series called The Enemy Within. And so we are looking at the destructive force of unforgiveness and the benefits of having forgiveness towards one another. So before we go on here with episode 3, I want to kind of back up and see what we were talking about in last episode. So last episode, in episode 2, we were talking about the consequences of not forgiving people, where we become negative people. We have a separation from God. We have health problems. Our healing may be hindered. And our relationship with God and other people may be at risk. And we were talking about that Yeshua compels us, encourages us to love one another. And to know that the world will know that we are his followers when we love one another. I don't think the world's going to be encouraged when we're bickering with one another and we're spiteful towards one another. They're not going to want to have what we have. So we were taking a look at about how we deal with offenses is very important, because it's going to be dependent upon the application of the fruits of the Spirit in our life to guide us in this journey of how to be lovers of our neighbors and to be lovers of ourselves and to care about our neighbors enough that we're willing to absolve them of conflict in our lives, absolve ourselves from conflict. There's this journey of trying to be right with God often is hindered by our relationship we have with other people. So how you deal with your family member, your coworker, your family friend, your lifelong friend, maybe a person you just met, somebody in your congregation. Any of those relationships that are not good can directly affect your relationship with Yahweh. So those are the things that we were talking about in episode 2. If you haven't watched that episode, please go check out that episode 2 to get caught up of where we're at. Okay? So let's move on. All right, here with episode 3, we're going to talk about the greatest commandment. So if those of you who are no strangers to the Bible, you will recognize this in Mark chapter 12, verse 29-31. And I'm reading out of the Scriptures Bible, 2009, okay? So I usually teach most of the time out of the King James Bible because it's a kind of a neutral translation to teach from. But every now and then, like this time, we want to teach from the Hebraic Scriptures. So in Mark chapter 12, verse 29-31. And this is actually, this is the core part of knowing how to walk out Torah, to walk in Torah, to walk in the truth of the Torah, to where you allow the Torah to directly affect your life. So let's read that. Mark chapter 12, verses 29-31. And it says, and Yeshua answered him, The first of all the commandments is, Hiro Yisrael, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh is one. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your mind and with all your strength. This is the first command. And the second likewise is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other greater commandment than this. So this is a great verse to hone in on, is to apply this verse in action. When we have a problem with our neighbor, when we have a conflict with a friend, when we need to have conflict resolution with our coworkers, maybe our neighbors, maybe they're your physical neighbors, they live next to you. Maybe it's the person in your congregation, which is even worse, that people in a congregation can't settle out their differences, is really concerning. But we need to know that when we try to work out problems with someone that we have a conflict with, we need to remember that love is at the center of all we do. If we want to be Torah keepers, we need to know in everything that Yahweh commands us to do, is love is at the center of all of it. All the law hangs on how much we love Yahweh and how much we love our neighbor. And so we need to hone in on this part about we shall love our neighbor as ourselves, okay? And so when we have unforgiveness towards someone, I think it's a little hard to have love for our neighbor, wouldn't you think? 1 John 2:11 and 1 John 4:20, let's read that. 1 John 2:11 says, but the one who hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness and does not know where he is going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. So what we're getting out of this verse is the key part, which is found in the last part of that scripture. The darkness has blinded his eyes. So when you hate your brother, you are walking in darkness where you can't see where you're going on this narrow road that we're supposed to be in. When you're walking on the narrow road, if you can picture this, is that you're going to be walking in a fog, okay? It's going to be hard to see where you're going. We're supposed to let the light of Yeshua guide us in our way, but we're going to be blinded. It's going to be hard to see because we're clouded by our unforgiveness that we have for someone else. So we don't want to be walking on this narrow road where darkness is blinding our eyes. 1 John 4:20 says, if someone says, I love Elohim, so do you love Elohim? I know I do. And we hate our brother. I hope you don't hate your brother, because the scripture says you are a liar. For the one not loving his brother whom he has seen, how is he able to love Elohim who he has not seen? So this is a very basic and standard truth of following after Yahweh in the spirit of truth, is that in order to love Yahweh, we have to be able to love our neighbor. We can't say, I love Elohim, but I hate my brother, because hate cannot be in our journey. Hate is not one of the things we're supposed to carry in our knapsack on our narrow road journey. So we know for us to love Yahweh, we have to also love our neighbor. There's no separation of it. We cannot say we are a Torah follower and we love Yahweh, but we have this reserved space in our heart where we hate our brother. And some one of you out there may say, well, I don't hate anybody. But think about the people you may have a problem with, that you have unforgiveness towards. Maybe you have an ex-spouse. Maybe you have an ex-friend. Maybe you have an ex-something. That relationship, when we put ex, signifies that that's a broken relationship there. Now, I understand that there's some circumstances, like in divorces, that it can be really hard to fix those relationships because you've moved on. But there are other relationships where you can fix them, where they don't have to be ex-friends anymore. They can be renewed friends, okay? And so we want to be focusing on this idea that is a core idea of this teaching about forgiveness, is remember that forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is for you. It doesn't matter if the other person ever comes to you and repents or asks your forgiveness, because it's not about them. It's about your relationship that you have with Messiah. So it benefits you to no end to only forgive the next person, because it benefits you. And perhaps there will be a time when someone will come back and say, brother or sister, I've offended you, I sinned against you, will you please forgive me? Then the relationship is fully restored. And so that's what we're looking for in our relationship with Messiah, is that we're looking for a restoration of relationships, okay? So when we're we're harboring resentment towards another person, we are actually seeing an absence of the fruits of the Spirit in our life, which will leave us as a person vulnerable to insult and injury, okay? So let me run that by you again. The absence of the fruits of the Spirit leaves a person vulnerable to insult and injury. So this is why it's so important that we have the fruits of the Spirit, so that we can usher in and we can invite in and we can allow into our lives the fruit of the Spirit. Just go back and look at that list of the fruits of the Spirit and see if any of those things can actually come into your life while you still have insult and injury in your life from a broken relationship. I don't think you can. So what you're doing is, when you decide that you're not going to forgive, you're preventing the fruits of the Spirit from coming out of your life. Every believer should be producing fruits, the fruit of the Spirit. So if you have no fruits you don't have any of these fruits, then you need to do something about that. We need to do something about that, okay? But however, if you have the fruits of the Spirit, you are going to be invulnerable to personal, emotional injury. Let me read it again. If you have the fruits of the Spirit, you're going to be invulnerable to personal, emotional injury, because you're using those fruits of the Spirit to guide you instead of your emotions. You're not letting the works of the flesh guide you. You're letting the fruits of the Spirit guide you. So talking about this fruits of the Spirit, let's go to that scripture. And we're in Galatians 5:22, and we're back again in the scriptures 2009, okay? It reads, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no Torah. And we could replace Torah with instructions or law. Okay, so looking at this list again, do you see any way that you can have the fruits of the Spirit if you've got hardness towards someone? I don't think you can, because what you'll be producing is bad fruit. The burden of offenses that we carry is linked directly to a spirit of offense. So maybe you don't know what this spirit of offense is, but I do, because I've had it from time to time, and I still deal with it here and there. Is that when we allow the spirit of offense to dictate how we deal with situations, how we react to conversations, react to circumstances, this spirit of offense controls us, because we allow ourselves to be easily offended. And where we need to get rid of that spirit, we need to kick it to the curb and get rid of that burden of offenses, because they will come to prick you and pry you away from the love we're supposed to have for one another. The root of bitterness opens up a bottle of toxicity that poisons not only ourselves, but our circle of relationships. Once the door of unforgiveness has been opened, more offenses will fester, okay? The root of bitterness will put the grace of God in our lives at risk. Let me read that again. The enemy within, which is unforgiveness, first begins with a root of bitterness. When we have this root of bitterness that dwells up within us, it puts the grace of God in our lives at risk, okay? Let's read about this in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15. It says, see to it that no one falls short of the favor of Elohim, that no root of bitterness, springing up causes trouble by which many become defiled. So like again, the root of bitterness will put your grace that you have from Elohim in your life at risk. Think about those things, please. As I leave you, because we've run out of time for this episode 3 of The Enemy Within. And as usual, if you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. Become a part of the Reboot the Root family, and invite you to like this video if it has blessed you. And if it has blessed you, why don't you send me an email to reboottherootjourney@gmail.com. Well, with that being said, this is Reboot the Root saying shalom, and join me next time on Reboot the Root.